Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. This is your weekly forecast for the 28th of July to August 3rd. And I feel like I am going to be saying this every single week for a prolonged period of time, but we have some really interesting transits that are remarkably impactful happening this week. Um, and I say this, I love astrology so much because it truly, as you observe what is going on, with the transits and the archetypal dynamics that it's reflecting, you see it played out individually and then collectively. And we are really at this critical juncture on a global level um, where we are through the collective conscious, which is a Piscean Neptunian 12th house dynamic, are really wanting to accelerate the evolutionary growth on a collective level. And as most of you guys have experienced, I'm sure, I feel like it's a universal experience, when evolution is accelerating, it kind of reminds me a little bit of being on an airplane and the turbulence that's going on because you're going fast and there is heat or pressure from, in a plane, it would be the atmosphere, but on an individual level, it's the heat and the pressure of the reality that you're finding yourself in. It's like the um, the structures in which you find yourself in. And I think we can all say that there's a lot going on in the world and there's a lot of turbulence. And I do want to give like a message of hope and faith because I feel it is really necessary. There is a lot of negative, evil, dark. You put the adjective in, insert it, whatever feels true for you. That is really happening within the collective on a global level. And we have a North Node in Pisces, and we have a very pronounced Neptune um, that is transiting the ruler of that North Node, and it is retrograde right now and tracking with Saturn. And we feel it um, because the collective unconscious or the collective conscious in general is about the evolution held within the totality of everyone here on this planet, right here, right now. And we also have our own individual growth and evolution, and it is impacted by the collective. It is why there's this sensitivity, why there is so much being talked about, is because the quickening, the speeding up of evolution is wanting to happen. It's wanting us on a total collective level to liberate Pluto and Aquarius from where we have over identified with these structures, and these structures are dealing with our mind, our beliefs, our values, the needs. And it's not rooted and hasn't been the majority of it in what is actually natural and timeless. And so it's really wanting to try to burst through this and shake things up. And that is why we're seeing the crisis, because things have gotten to an all-time high of, on a overall collective level, the resistance to what it is that we are supposed to be liberating from. And I just wanted to really emphasize this because this is really, like I said, we have a lot of powerful and a lot of intense transits that are going to continue to happen. But it's all good because here's the beautiful thing. Just like each one of us individually are impacted by the collective's evolution, whether it's resisting or evolving, we also independently, individually can have an effect on the collective conscious as well. And that is really why I feel one of the reasons I call to really just always do these videos about the transits. So, this kind of laid a groundwork or a foundation for what I want to talk about for this week. And the first thing I want to show to you guys, and then I will, as always, point this out and then go over it with you, is today and tomorrow, and it's been happening and it's still going to be happening throughout this week, but yesterday, today, and tomorrow, Mercury retrograde is conjunct the North Node of Neptune. All right. This is fascinating. And it's important to keep in mind when we're looking at the nodes of a planet, we need to look at that transiting planet itself. So we also have this Neptune retrograde um, in Aries. It is sextile to Pluto. And then you have the south node of Neptune in Aquarius, and it is ruled by Uranus in Gemini, which is conjunct Setna. Okay? We know that Uranus is ruled by this Mercury that's conjunct the north node of Neptune. And, you know, we also want to pull in this Mars because it is the ruler of Neptune retrograde. And it is conjunct the lunar south node, but it is in a new phase. So, what I really want to speak to about this is Neptune, yes, it's the collective conscious. It is a very remarkable archetype, Neptune Pisces, the 12th, in that it's speaking to the totality of consciousness, your consciousness in your own individual chart, and the collective's consciousness, kind of what I already stated earlier. But whenever we're having an impactful Neptune transit like we are, because not only is it retrograde and it, entered the sign of Aries a few months ago, it's retrograding back into Pisces. And so it's also the ruler of that North Node in Pisces. So when Neptune was in Pisces, it was really this time period of wanting to dissolve any type of beliefs um, that were delusionary in nature. And with Saturn there, it's really about restructuring the collective's consciousness and independently, each one of us restructuring our consciousness too. And our consciousness and the collective's is affected by what we believe. And what we believe also uh, corresponds to what we value and what we believe we need. Um, hence why we can have ideals. We put people on pedestals or we give ultimate meaning to some type of external source, a relationship, um, money, career, this, that, or the other. And at some point, the soul has to gain wisdom and then apply it whenever that bubble of ideal or belief that is not rooted in what is actually natural or the actual reality And that typically comes, the crisis from that being popped comes through the form of disillusionment, right? I've talked about this many, many times. So, Neptune and Pisces, that transit, a lot of us were really having to, depending on what this was aspecting in your chart and what house it was falling in, we're really having these soul reckonings and experiencing crisis that stemmed from being disillusioned. And what that was trying to do was to have us look within and understand through direct experience the actual nature of our beliefs and paradoxically what the actual truth was. And truth is very different than belief, okay? So when we're looking at beliefs, they stem from conditioning. Um, as humans, we typically just believe something. And if we believe it, it's good enough. And we can really convince ourselves to believe anything through our imagination, our conditioning, our fantasies. And that does not actually mean that it's based in actual reality of truth. So here we have Neptune in Aries, and right now it's retrograde. So we are revisiting these core themes of the desires that we each have personally and the desires that the collective conscious has as a group, as a whole, to do Aries, to start a new cycle, a new evolutionary cycle by really liberating from the things of the past, the delusions, the ideals, the apparent versus actual reality. And we're really needing to initiate setting into motion the wisdom that we have garnered through our prior experiences and applying it in a way in order to have self-consistency, which I will get to as an archetype in a minute as well. So, what does this mean? With Mercury conjunct the North Node of Neptune and the South Node of Neptune in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus and Gemini. Well, first thing I want you to know is everyone's North and South Node of Neptune falls in the signs of Leo and Aquarius. So when we're thinking about the South Node of Neptune and Aquarius, what it's speaking to and reflecting is this ongoing evolutionary journey of liberating from the beliefs, the delusions, the ideals, anything that keeps you from having a direct experience that is based in actual reality and truth. With the South Node in Aquarius as well, Neptune South Node. This is also speaking to the collective mind, the collective individuated unconscious, and how it is wanting to be sped up right now through the liberation of the delusions, of the inaction, of not creating a new cycle of staying stuck in the past. It's fixed South Node in Aquarius for Neptune. So there's like an immense amount of people who want to hold on based out of their security because their beliefs are what makes them feel secure. And what we're doing right now with Neptune retrograde and the South Node of Neptune and Aquarius, ruled by Uranus and Gemini, is we are reliving right now the experience of the divisiveness that is happening because of belief systems. And you've got groups of people over here who are understanding the truth and values and needs that are in alignment with natural and timeless laws. And then you have groups of people over here that are really rooted in the distortions of exclusion and feeling superior. And so we're feeling all of this right now. And Uranus and Gemini is also asking for the liberation of the mind, of the thinking, of what has been learned, Gemini, Mercury, around these dynamics in order to break free of the past and to liberate from these dynamics independently and collectively. Luckily, Uranus is trine Pluto. Uranus is Pluto's ruler, and so this is really helping to speed up evolution, like what I talked about earlier at the beginning of the onset of this video. It's very important for us to listen to how we are being inwardly directed and what it is we're coming to understand about ourselves personally and to apply that knowledge, Gemini, Mercury, and to do it in a way that cultivates self-consistency, um, because that's where true magic of evolution happens, right? Then, when we think about the North Node of Neptune and the sign of Leo, this is really speaking and reflecting to how we're giving purpose to what has been learned and how we're giving creative meaning and purpose to our individual lives. So it's very important for you to look at your own natal sun because it's ruling that. And then we're looking at the transiting sun. But here we have Mercury retrograde conjunct this North Node of Neptune and Leo. So this is on a personal level, giving us an opportunity to revisit um, the different components within our consciousness about what we've learned, what we think, the messages we've received, the messages that we internalized and then we acted them out. Um, and it's also speaking to the need to liberate from these dynamics further and to really tap into the Neptunian function of the whispers emanating from within the soul's consciousness. This is the path to go. This is the way to go to self-actualize in a creative and purposeful way that gives meaning to your life, right? And it helps to um, dissolve and wrap up that cycle that we've all been going through on a collective level. This is where we are experiencing the darker shades of Leo and people's thinking, Mercury, that is exclusionary, that is elitist, that is the delusion, because we're pulling in Neptune here, of superiority. And how that's been perpetuating the divisiveness, Uranus and Gemini, the ruler of Neptune's south node, and that Uranus is ruled by this Mercury retrograde. But on a personal level, what I want to say is, again, whatever idea or thought that comes into your mind about some type of action to take, um, that it comes out of nowhere. It's like all of a sudden you just have this idea and you're in your gut, you are a little bit afraid after you're excited at first. This is really speaking to this is the path of your own evolutionary future, and it's meant to be taken, and you will learn as you go. The best way that I can say this, I've had these experiences in my life where I've really had something seeded into my consciousness, an idea that came out of nowhere, and it was really emanating from within on a soul level, which was also um, my soul really wanting to co-create for my own evolutionary growth, right? Which is each one of us has this dynamic, which is a Leo Aquarius dynamic mixed with Pisces, okay? But for me, as an example, uh, it was at first astrology and not it having this idea. I was interested in it, but I kept, you know, having these random thoughts of I want to be an astrologer. And it would be really exciting at first, and then I would feel really scared. That's because of my own evolutionary dynamics of growing up in religion and conservatism and fundamentalism and this and that, and I'm not even going to go into all of it. But there was a reason why I chose that. And this was really speaking to, this was part of the path for my own creative purpose and meaning in life. It actually, astrology helped whenever I listened to that and I acted on it. It opened a door to help me understand myself more. And then another one that recently happened, it was a few years ago. I was like, I need to move. And I was scared because I knew I was going to leave a lot of people and those relationships weren't going to exist but anymore. But I heeded the call and I acted on it whenever the time was right, and I knew when the time was right. And it was very liberating. And so these are the dynamics is that I'm trying to speak to is with the South Node of Neptune in Aquarius, it's going to speak to whatever idea that you have. It can be big, small, it doesn't really matter. It's very personal, very individualistic. If you feel excited about it and then a bit scared, this is really speaking to a soul calling, and it's going to help you to individuate. It's going to help you to liberate, especially if this thought keeps coming in stronger and stronger, especially right now with Mercury retrograde. It's probably, there's some people out here that I'm sure it's like pinging in. It's like, hey, you haven't listened yet. Listen. And this is that signature, especially with Mercury retrograde conjunct the North Node of Neptune. This is going to give the creative purpose and meaning to your life because it's going to accelerate your evolutionary growth. There's something here. And guess what? That's going to feed into the collective unconscious and it's going to help to accelerate the collective consciousness too. So, this is, like I said, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it's bang on that 11-degree mark. It's going to um, still be there throughout, the next week. And guess what? This is the second pass. It's going to get a third pass once Mercury stations direct and moves forward. So really, really pay attention and bet on yourself. Have that dignity, have that self-love I've been talking about. Utilize the natural expression of Leo, you know, have the self-focus, go within, and also there's this calling to liberate from what thinking has structured your beliefs about yourself, about your abilities, about others, and challenge and see, does that actually feel true for me? Or was this taught? Was this just learned and I believed it because long ago I was told I need to believe it, or I subliminally osmosed that into myself and I never thought to think about, is this actually something that I really feel is true? So this is a really, really powerful transit that I don't really think is talked about that much. Um, Then, tomorrow on the 29th, we do have Chiron in Aries, and it's in a crescent sextile to Venus and Gemini, which, by the way, Mars, the ruler of Chiron, on the South Node in Virgo, and Venus are both ruled by that Mercury retrograde that is conjunct the North Node of Neptune. So, what is this Chiron sextile to Venus? This is really speaking to the wounds around where you've been wounded and how that wounding could have wounded others, right? It is this need for each one of us to integrate the knowledge around the awareness of those wounds and to apply that knowledge as a way to fortify our inner relationship to self in order to give that creative purpose and meaning to life. It's asking for us to jump out of the well and to apply it in the here and now, to really take in more information that is new, Venus and Gemini, and then to reflect on it, Mercury retrograde, um, in order for each one of us to then improve upon the wounds of the past. Mars, the ruler of that Chiron in Virgo, conjunct that South Node, but it's in a new phase. So it's wanting us to wrap up the emotional dynamics of the past through self-actualizing by changing our thinking and reflecting on how we can go about applying that knowledge, utilizing our voice, how we express ourselves, how we interact with others in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment that can actually change our awareness around our wounds that really have become the chains that bind us, right? And then that Mars in Virgo is helping us to purge these dynamics of where we felt inferior, or maybe we overcompensated and presented ourselves as, you know, bigger than life or a know-it-all or this or that because there was this deep, deep wound inside, ourselves around our, I think of Aries as our freedom, our individuality, our ability to be our uh, our ability to maintain our autonomy, right? And where we've carried shame or guilt stemming from being reprimanded for just having desires to be who we are and then being, criticized, Virgo, and viewed as less than, inferior by people who were feeling superior. Mercury and Leo, that it runs the gamut, right? Or where we have these wounds to break free from the past, where we didn't do that, and we're trapped in a cycle of anger because we feel victimized and we don't know how to constructively utilize our anger to actually empower us. And that would be to be responsible, to utilize that to harness our anger in a way that actually can bring improvement, not just for ourselves, but for others, right? This is also where people right now might be experiencing things where they are coming to an awareness about something that once felt hidden, about old traumas, or even in the present moment, the feeling disillusioned or really waking up to the truth of something where there has been an immense amount of wounds, either them wounding others, because Chiron can be that. It's not just where we're wounded, it's where we can wound others as well. And needing to take this accountability and then to apply it for self-improvement, right? But it also goes back to, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here because sometimes my brain can't keep up with my mouth, or my mouth can't keep up with my brain. There are people speaking on the anger dynamic. There are some people who are waking up and understanding the actual reality, Neptune, Pisces, of what is going on. And when we wake up to that, especially when there's been an injustice or trauma or betrayal or hurt, and we realize that someone wasn't viewing us as an equal, or they were judging or shaming us, and we really didn't realize it. And now we're seeing the totality of the truth of that. The first thing that usually happens is anger, and then the grief follows. Here's the thing: anger is not bad. Even though many of us are taught that it is not. It is about how you utilize and harness that anger. It's about learning, where is your power? Are you going to utilize your individual power for harm or for good? And it's okay to still be angry. Um, Lord knows I have felt anger about a lot of things, but I've had to really reflect on how can I utilize this to leave the past in the past, um, as far as not repeating or making those same choices again that led to those situations, but to actually take what is necessary from the past and what has been learned or gleaned and to apply it in a self-consistent way to continue to develop and improve. And that promotes the healing on a holistic level, Virgo. So, you know, what is it that is coming up for you? That crescent sextile to Venus can really have us understanding something that we didn't understand before. And again, it's Venus, so there's this need to really pay attention what's going on the inside. What is that self-talk? What is coming into your consciousness? What are you hearing? And then really utilizing that as a frame of reference to make a different choice, to make new choices, to continue to adjust and to heal. This is also going to be happening, while there's this triple conjunction going on with the lunar south node and the moon and Mars. And to me, that's really speaking to we might have emotional dynamics triggered where we feel victimized or inferior or guilt or shame. And that Mars is bringing it up from the past, the South Node, in order for us to make that new choice, right? And that new choice is going to be linked also to Mercury retrograde conjunct the North Node of Neptune and Neptune in Aries itself ruled by that Mars. What new choice can you make that is going to improve um, and help you on a path of healing? How to feel more secure within yourself. Okay. This is also, Jupiter is semi-sextile Mercury retrograde at this time, and Jupiter is going to be ruled by this moon and Virgo conjunct the lunar south node and Mars. And so it's really about expanding our awareness around our emotional dynamics. And the thing about Cancer is Cancer at its core is about emotional and psychological security and the need for self-consistency in order to feel secure, right? If we are depending on others for that security or that validation on an emotional, psychological level, we're never really going to experience the truth of inwardly feeling secure. This is a dynamic that can really help us to revisit our thinking and our beliefs that have conditioned our emotional and psychological selves, and where that has induced insecurity, and where we can expand upon our emotional awareness and the truth within that in order to really feel secure within. Okay? So Venus is still going to be square to that south node and Mars and now the moon. And so that's really asking for this action to take information and apply it in a new way that helps one to feel more not just secure, Cancer, and self-consistent, but also from that security and self-consistency that we're wanting to expand upon by really trying to liberate from different constructs and structures within our mind, it and what has been learned and what is conditioning. It's really helping us to create the action to be self-sustaining. And to be self-sustaining emotionally, physically, psychologically, and spiritually, there has to be that deepening of emotional and psychological security and applying the knowledge, Virgo and Gemini, Mercury, um, to be more self-consistent, right? It's to be self-consistent, you have to apply what you have learned, and that will turn into more and more wisdom, right? So then on the 30th, Chiron in Aries is going to retrograde until January 2nd of 2026. So all of these wounds that have been coming up or that you've been gaining more and more clarity about, that's helping you change your awareness, there's going to be a deepening of this from now until January. It's going to be, this is happening right whenever um, Mars is in Virgo still. So there is this, which is going to be its ruler still. So there is this dynamic of really synthesizing, not just synthesizing, but what is the word I want to use? Analyzing in order to improve upon the knowledge that we're gaining around our awareness, dealing with wounds. This is also on a collective level where we can see the scapegoating and the bulldozing and wounded people wounding the masses through Mars, war, Aries, war, things like that. It's like at one point in time, these souls were so wounded that now they're doing the wounding. That is a Chiron and Aries classic signature. Or someone who has Chiron in the first house, you see that a lot. It's like, I feel wounded, now I'm going to wound you. And so we're kind of seeing this play out the back and forth, which is really just creating crisis, Mars and Virgo, over and over and over again. Okay, but on personal levels, this gives you an opportunity to really revisit um, where it is that you are being held hostage by where you felt victimized or what has happened to you, and through changing your awareness, um, becoming, instead of the victim, the victor, right? And having the fortitude and I would say fortitude to actualize that, to act on those desires to heal and improve those areas of your life. The same day, Venus is going to enter into Cancer, where she's going to be ruled by a Libra moon. And this is going to really jumpstart this dynamic of what I just talked about pertaining to Cancer, emotional and psychological security, and the need for self-consistency. With that Venus, as she enters into the sign of Cancer, being ruled by a Libra moon, that can really highlight where there are some emotional extremes playing out that we're needing to really um, go within and really understand the emotional dynamics in order to fortify our inner relationship to self. I will definitely be talking more and more about Venus and the sign of Cancer throughout her transit. But one thing I do want to say is on the 31st and the 30th, Venus in Cancer is going to be trining the asteroid Hecate by sign. This is Hecate really is this asteroid that holds the lantern and illuminates the path in which one is meant to take. And it's something that is meant to be felt in the gut. It's pulling in Hecate and Scorpio and Venus and Cancer. It's a sensory, like a feeling, and it's going to be felt within the gut. This is the path to take. It gets illuminated in order for us to then, Hecate being ruled by Pluto and Aquarius, to liberate from where we've over-identified with those emotional and psychological dynamics that are really keeping us in a place of stagnation, of insecurity. All right. On the 31st, Venus is going to square Neptune and Saturn, both retrograde, you know, ruled by that Mars. These are first quarter squares. This is where there can be this feeling of a crisis in action. So it really intensifies the need to create an action, and that action, the reason why it's a crisis in action is because it can be inducing a lot of insecurity, cancer. Um, and so this is this dynamic that's actually speaking to anytime we're about to grow and evolve, we're going to experience insecurity because insecurity is the unknown oftentimes. And if we're needing to create an action and we're feeling insecure about it, um, I kind of, with Hecate there, it's like lighting that path. Like, hey, this might actually be your best friend to, really lean into this turn right here. Because it can also be having us revisit old dynamics, dealing with authority or a lack of authority, a lack of autonomy, disillusionment, our ideals and our beliefs, and how at one point they felt so secure to us, and now there's this soul drive to do something different, but I'm afraid because what is this going to feel like? I don't know. Um, but really, this is something that could be revisited, um, you know, uh, even dealing with childhood, cancer, Aries, um, and revisiting something where our sense of self-worth was affected by inaction, not taking the action. And so this square, depending on where it's at in your chart and if it's aspecting something, can really amplify this for some people of needing to create the action that's going to liberate oneself from the past ideals, beliefs that have structured their consciousness and once felt so secure, and now they don't really anymore, but it's like I don't really feel like I can create an action because this is all I've ever known, right? And so what I want to say is this is asking for action. The crisis is in the action itself. And because this is pulling in Aries and Cancer, that can create an immense amount of insecurity, but utilize that insecurity as a stepping off place for understanding that in order to grow, something has to be new first. Um, I also want you to understand that Venus is the lower octave of Neptune. And so there's something here about each one of our individual relationships and where we feel a sense of security or insecurity, where we are needing more emotional, psychological self-consistency and to act on our desires to initiate a new cycle of evolutionary growth that really restructures our inner relationship, Venus, through our consciousness, Neptune, and to really have the courage to have compassion for yourself, right? If you're wanting to really feel more secure within yourself, in order to start a new cycle pertaining to that, you're going to have to make a choice and act on a desire that you haven't yet. And that can really be clarifying once you create that action and there's feedback from your environment around understanding the nuances of your emotional and psychological dynamics. Okay? It can bring up a lot, but that is meant for you to use in order to improve. Um, this is really interesting too because as Venus is square Neptune and Saturn, also Venus trining Hecate, so we have like this bearer lighting up a path that seems very dark, where we're feeling insecure. We don't know what to do. We don't know what path to take and how this could actually be really healing, but it's like starting something new. And I'm revisiting this, and it's about empowering yourself through being your own authority, through self-reflecting, through applying the knowledge that has turned into Saturnian wisdom. But Mars, the ruler of Neptune and Saturn, will be conjunct the South Node of Venus in a new phase. So this is really amplifying this dynamic of, hey, something from the past pertaining to your own inner relationship to self and how you relate to yourself has impacted others, because it's about the conditioning. This is an opportunity to make that new choice, Mars in a new phase, through revisiting these old relational dynamics. And through that action, the improvement comes and lessons of being self-consistent in a new way will naturally occur. Okay? Um, Venus is then going to, on the 1st of August, um, it's going to perfect in its square to Saturn and Neptune. Again, it's really, these are intense days of like, hey, action, insecurity, self-reflection, though. Um, but then I really love that on the day after that square perfects, Venus is going to trine Pluto in a first quarter trine. So that is really, a first quarter trine can really help to clarify where we are stuck. And maybe we didn't realize that we were stuck. And so this is going to, um, it's an out of sign trine as well. Um, but it's where we have this clarity of where we're at an evolutionary standstill, but yet Pluto is putting enough pressure, but it's through a trine, so it's not too bad. I don't even want to use the word bad. Like I said, it's clarifying. Um, in order with that Pluto and Aquarius trining that Venus and Cancer, again, out of sign, um, it is really allowing us to liberate from where we've over identified with the emotional dynamics. And let me clarify, it's not a trine, excuse me. It is an inconjunct, um, which actually is going to put the pressure on more for a lot of people. But I do feel like inconjuncts are very deeply clarifying because they can really tap into a Virgo-like dynamic of where we're taking in the information and through a realization on an internal level stemming from external pressure or vice versa to where it becomes clarifying. You have the aha moment, and then you can liberate from those emotional dynamics. Um, And then the last thing I want to say about this week is that on the 3rd, Uranus is going to finally reach 1 degrees of Gemini, and that's going to be when Mercury is at 6 degrees Leo. And Mercury retrograde is going to be trining the asteroid Aletheia, in what we call last quarter trine. Okay, so we're doing all of this emotional, psychological work that's really speaking to clarity, liberation, especially around our thoughts, what's learned, in order to really create more purpose and meaning into our lives to promote an overall healing by deepening our security within ourselves. We've got some really great energy through the asteroid goddesses like Hecate that are helping us to understand what course of action to take, even when we feel insecure or scared to create the action. It's really saying, hey, empower yourself, you can do this. And with Mercury retrograde ruling that Uranus in Gemini, um, we are really it's speaking to, again, remember Uranus is trining Pluto. It's speaking about where is an inner paradox or division happening whenever it comes to your own thinking. And with Mercury retrograde ruling that Uranus, it's helping us to really understand how to empower ourselves, especially while Mercury retrograde is trining Aletheia, because Aletheia is really about understanding and coming back to our natural truth on a soul level, coming back to our nature. So even with the Venus in conjunct Pluto happening the day before, there is a deepening of understanding our actual individuality in a natural sense. And that is deepening um, our security from the inside out. It's helping us to recover the deconditioned, like the unconditioned um, structure within on a soul level. What is most natural? How are you most natural? How are you most unique? What does set you outside of others, but yet there's this beauty in others being different too? Um, Aletheia trining Mercury retrograde ruling that Uranus. Um, it's in a last quarter. It's helping us to really understand what creative purpose and meaning we're meant to be giving to our lives on a soul level. And that creative purpose and meaning is going to be coming from what is most authentic and natural about you, and deconditioning from the thoughts and the learning that says that you're weird, you shouldn't, this, that, or the other. Um, so overall, I find this to be some intense energies, but I also feel like they're very clarifying individually. And some people are not going to have these impact them as harshly because it might not be aspecting something in their chart, or it depends on your own evolutionary growth. Collectively, there's going to be a deepening of understanding the truth and more disillusionment and crisis for people who are now liberating themselves from what they've learned, and from what they learned corresponding to their beliefs, and those beliefs corresponding to their values and their needs and the scarcity or the insecurity. And it's really shaking things up in order to get more people on board with more natural values through the actual truth, right? Even that Aletheia trining Mercury retrograde, there's something really revealing that can happen around the truth. Where there was a distortion around natural law, it really being clarified in the social arena. The last thing I want to say about the collective with these energies and Venus entering into Cancer and Hecate and Aletheia being very strongly placed. There's some other asteroids, it would just take me too long, and this is already long, is that a lot of themes pertaining, and we've already been seeing this, but we're going to see it more, are going to be amplified when it comes to women and children. That is where I will say here in the United States, there's going to be an amplification dealing with the archetypes of those two themes, and where distortions have played out around values and beliefs pertaining to women and children. Um, I would say that the 29th is going to be a very trigger point for some of the leaders around the world, um, who are in their, you know, Uranus opposition. I mean, Uranus return, excuse me, and who also have Pluto in Leo. Um, I've looked at some charts. There are some very interesting transits happening, especially to, I would say, the president here in the United States. And I think that, again, there's going to be more clarity, but there can also be a lot of anger. And I feel like there's going to be more people who are going to feel disillusioned. And again, I'm going to continue to speak about this because I feel this very deeply. Instead of excluding people once they have something where they become disillusioned by a choice or an action they made, it's really important as they take accountability to not exclude them, even though they might have been doing that in the past. It is about really taking new action and making new choices around compassion and empathy. That doesn't mean dismissing or denying the impact, right? Because there's a difference between intention and impact. And there are a lot of well-meaning people who their intentions with their choices were well-meaning. And then through the direct experience, having to realize to their horror the impact and the negative consequence of those choices because it was not rooted in the actual truth. And so, in order for healing and collective growth to happen, we really need to tap into the choices that are needing to be made with that lunar north node in Pisces, ruled by that Neptune in Aries retrograde, having these chances, revisiting of creating new action around what love, empathy, and compassion looks like based in actual truth and reality. So that is what I want to say. Um, you know, I could say so much more, but I do just be on the lookout. I would say really the 29th and onwards. All right. I hope you all have a great weekend and I will see you soon.